I want to first start off by thanking Mary Moriarty, the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, for organizing this symposium and for inviting me to speak with all of you here today. I am super excited to be here. Everyone at OGJDP, and I'm joined by my colleague Naomi Smoot, who's over there on the side there. Everyone at OGJDP is grateful to Hennepin County for the work that you all are doing. The Headway Youth Diversion Services and so many community-based organizations offering young people a path to treatment and accountability that diverts them out of the juvenile justice system. And we commend you for your commitment to research that has demonstrated success. So please keep doing what you're doing. You are a valued partner of ours. So today I want to talk about OGJDP's priorities, our support for the continuum of care approach to serving our nation's young people, and then I want to offer some thoughts about youth violence and victimization and some trends that have come to light. And then I'll highlight a few things, action steps that OGJDP is undertaking as we work to provide greater justice for all young people. So today's forum takes place on the first day of Black History Month, when this country focuses on the profound accomplishments of Black Americans. At this time of year, our reflections and our hopes for the future turn naturally to the vision of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King believed in justice and equity for all, and he strongly believed that young people had the power to create a more just world. To advance his vision, he listened to young people, embraced them as partners, and spoke about what he learned from them. We at OGJDP also value youth perspective. We seek to create a more equitable and just system by listening to and working with youth and families impacted by the juvenile justice system. Dr. King once said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." I find inspiration in those words, and I believe that they are an apt description of our work as youth justice professionals. We all strive to bring greater fairness and equity to the lives of young people. So I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and about OGJDP. In May, I will celebrate my second anniversary as administrator of OGJDP, but my commitment to youth and families goes back decades. I began working on youth justice issues about 30 years ago, advocating for juvenile justice reforms. OGJDP, or we call it JJ, is a federal agency within the U.S. Department of Justice that was established 50 years ago this year. So we are commemorating our 50th year. And it was established by the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act, the JJDPA. That law charges OGJDP with national leadership, resources, and funding to states, tribes, and communities to protect children, prevent delinquency, and improve the juvenile justice system. Our work helps to create safer communities and empower young people to lead productive lives. So as administrator, I direct OGJDP's grant programs, training, technical assistance initiatives, research, and policy activities. In other words, I'm responsible for making sure that OGJDP fulfills its mission to serve and protect this nation's young people. OGJDP envisions a nation where all children are free from crime and violence, and if they come into contact with the justice system, that it is rare, that it is fair, and that it is beneficial. 3 priorities guide our work, and I'm really pleased to see what you all talked about this morning because our priorities align with the topics that we discussed today. First, treating children as children. Second, serving youth at home, with their families, and in their communities. And third, opening up opportunities for young people who are justice involved. And 2 overarching principles run through these priorities. And those are a commitment to racial equity and fairness, and second, a promise to partner with directly impacted young people and their families. OGJDP is committed to recognizing and confronting the marginalization and racism that too many young people of color encounter every day with the juvenile justice system. We are also committed to listening to and learning from young people who encounter the juvenile justice system to better understand from their perspective what works, what doesn't, and why. In 2023, we worked towards achieving these 3 priorities that I just listed, and we developed and implemented a plan of action based on the feedback we heard at listening sessions and town halls with stakeholders like yourselves across the country. Those sessions were attended by young people, family members, practitioners, policymakers, and other stakeholders, and their feedback and your feedback today continues to guide OGJDP's funding, programmatic, and policy decisions to help reform the juvenile justice system. So in 2023, under the first priority that I mentioned, treating children as children, we worked with other Justice Department agencies to develop the 2023 National Strategy for Child Exploitation, Prevention, and Interdiction. We also launched a new partnership with the National Sheriff's Association to keep young people out of adult jails and facilities. And we're working with our Victims of Child Abuse Act partners to develop an integrated strategic training and technical assistance plan. And I think it really resonates with some of the things that were said this morning about helping kids heal when they're exposed to trauma and violence early on in their lives, right? That helps keep them out of the justice system, and that is about treating children as children. On our second priority, on keeping kids at home with their families and their communities, we are supporting the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform's Community of Practice, and that is a collaborative approach to developing community-based alternatives to youth incarceration. And on the third, opening up opportunities for young people involved in the justice system, we awarded $16 million nationally through our Second Chance Youth Reentry program to address the challenges that young people face when they leave confinement and they come home to their communities. We are partnering with AmeriCorps to ensure that justice-involved young people have an opportunity for an AmeriCorps experience, both to serve and to be served by that program. We also relaunched the Federal Coordinating Council on Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. The council has roughly 14 federal agencies on it, including Department of Labor, Health and Human Services, Department of Education, some of the other systems that impact our young people. And that council is designed to coordinate federal programs and activities for young people to encourage much more efficient and seamless delivery of resources for young people, particularly along the continuum of care. In 2023, we also have been working this past year to really operationalize our work to center directly impacted young people and their family members. We created a youth and family partnership working group to look at all of our business operations and to think about the ways that we are centering youth and families in our work. And one of the things that we did was we said, when grant applications come in, we have a bunch of people that are called peer reviewers who review those grants. We want young people and family members to be compensated like every other peer reviewer and to have an opportunity to review those grants and provide recommendations to us. We also, just this past week, I'm super excited to announce that we have a Youth Justice Fellowship Program. We have a call for applications out right now, so I'm looking at the young people who are in the room here. If you have lived experience in the justice system, I strongly encourage you to apply, and we'll share information on our website on that. We also, OJJDP is primarily a grant-making organization, and we have a number of programs that we put out solicitations or RFPs, or a call for funding. Every single one of those solicitations has language in it that says, if you are a prospective grantee, we want to hear from you. How are you working with directly impacted youth and their families? So for jurisdictions that want resources from OJJDP, that's a priority for us, is working with directly impacted youth and their families. And over the last year, we also intensified our work to increase racial equity and fairness. We added the National Racial Ethnic Disparities Data Book to our website. So it shows information like on a national basis on racial and ethnic disparities in the juvenile justice system. And it talks about how these disparities are measured and identifies decision points along the way where the greatest disparities exist. And I heard a little bit this morning about how there are disparities at the deepest end of the system, when kids are removed from home, when kids are certified as adults. That's data and information we want to make sure the field has. We have created a training and technical assistance center focused exclusively on reducing racial and ethnic disparities in the juvenile justice system. And you might recall that in 2018, the Federal Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act was updated. The provision around overrepresentation of youth of color was significantly improved to not just focus on counting the number of kids of color in the system and how that compares to other youth, but to focus on reducing disparities, right? Helping jurisdictions with that. So this center that we've created will help to double down on helping communities to reduce disparities in their systems. We also, this past year, worked throughout the Justice Department to issue a Dear Colleague letter, which looks at fees and fines in the justice system. And there is language in that Dear Colleague letter that essentially calls on courts and judges and other stakeholders to presume that young people are indigent and unable to pay fees and fines. And that is something that it reflects our commitment to addressing economic hardship within the legal system, and I'm proud that ODJDP was involved in that process. So that brings me back to Dr. King and his acknowledgments of these deep connections between economic hardship and racial inequality. Dr. King taught us that systemic change is crucial to fostering equity and fairness. So I want to tell you a little bit about our continuum of care approach. And that was great to hear the panel earlier and all the things that you're thinking about. We are supporting a continuum of care approach along the entire system, from prevention through reentry. So this past year, we created a new model of that, hearing from communities around the country that spans prevention, intervention, reentry strategies, and it looks at the continuum of care holistically. So we created a grant program called, this is a long name, Building Local Continuums of Care to Support Youth Success. So I call it the Continuum of Care Grant Program. And that will provide funding to state and local jurisdictions with high rates of youth incarceration. And we hope to fund 20 communities across the country under this first round of funding. We will create a training and technical assistance support to those grantees and for the broader field as well. So even if a jurisdiction is not one of the grantees, they'll still be able to access the training and the tools that get provided to help communities assess what are our assets, what kinds of things are we doing to support young people, where are the gaps, what are young people saying they need, and what are we not addressing? How do we resource those gaps? How do we build capacity to implement that? So I also want to talk a little bit about OJJDP's investment in prevention efforts, and particularly mentoring for young people. Mentoring is at the core of some of our programming. It's a large chunk of OJJDP's resources from the Congress. We know that mentoring and creating a relationship with a trusted mentor can change a young person's life for the better. And I think we heard KJ talk this morning. I know where KJ is in the room here. There you go. You talked about credible messengers, right? And credible messenger mentoring and the importance of that. And we know that mentoring increases the likelihood of a young person going to school and performing well and addressing any issues that they might have. So our funding supports an array of mentoring initiatives, both one-on-one mentoring, group mentoring, at a wide range of settings, within schools, within communities, within the justice system. And this past year, we actually offered a new mentoring program to assure support for kids who are justice involved, and to make sure that they're accessing our mentoring dollars. We're also working to improve school climate, right? To reduce violence in schools and to assure that we're addressing community violence issues. So our Enhancing School Capacity to Address Youth Violence initiative is supporting a collaborative approach between schools and communities, particularly community-based organizations, to address youth violence issues. We are also devoting a significant amount of our time and resources to diversion efforts and efforts to expand alternatives to detention and incarceration. We do a lot of reentry work through our Second Chance Act so that young people can get supports to return home as soon as they are if there has to be an out-of-home placement, as soon as they are placed, that we're already starting to work on the reentry of that young person. In addition to our funding, we support youth justice professionals who work in the juvenile justice system at every point in the system. We support trainings for law enforcement professionals, prosecutors, defense attorneys, juvenile court judges, professionals working in probation and parole services, and those working in detention and correction. We have a formula grant program where we provide funding to almost every single state and territory for a variety of youth programs, including services for youth at risk of reoffending. We also continue to support research, and we partner with our sister agency at the National Institute of Justice to better understand what works to prevent and reduce serious offending among young people. So all of these services and activities of OJJDP are part of our continuum of care approach to serving young people. And this year, we are also looking at the continuum of care in terms of what services and programs we have, so we can assess our gaps in funding to the field to try to help you address your gaps. So we're committed to the work. We're committed to partnering with stakeholders like yourselves to advance youth justice. So before I close, I want to just discuss a little bit about the state of youth crime and victimization in the country. And we heard a lot this morning about what's happening here in Minnesota. We know that there are some jurisdictions where they may be experiencing an increase in youth crime, and that's concerning. It's true, there are some jurisdictions across the country that are experiencing a small uptick in some categories of crime among young people. I just want to note that these increases reflect the actions of a very, very small number of young people who need our immediate attention. But I also want to note, and I think it was said earlier, Malika mentioned it, that young people are much more likely to be victims of crime than they are to be engaging in delinquency or into other behavior. One study that was released last year found that young people who have contact with the juvenile justice system, particularly if they have been in a juvenile detention center, are 23 times more likely to be killed by gun violence than other youth. So that should, let's just sit with that for a second. So understanding the nature of delinquency by youth and victimization is paramount to developing effective policy and successfully reforming the juvenile justice system. So to answer the needs of young people and community, we have to examine both the prevalence and characteristics of youth behavior and patterns of subsequent misconduct. So I want to just also mention another study that was released as part of our national report last year. So we looked at the histories of roughly, a cohort of young people, a sample of young people, about 160,000 young people. And what we found was those young people who had contact, of those 160,000 kids had contact with the juvenile justice system. So let's just start there, right? So you've got kids, and then you have a small number of kids who are in contact with the juvenile justice system. Most of those kids, the vast majority, 60%, never touch the system again, right? And it tracks what I heard about Minnesota, that the vast majority of kids have one contact and that's it. A small percentage of that 160,000, about 7%, were in contact with the juvenile justice system because of a violent crime. And then a smaller percentage of that, 0.1%, which is 1/10 of 1%. So 0.1%, which is 1/10 of 1%. I was told this job would have no math, but that's a very small number. those young people were found to have engaged in a violent crime for 4 more offenses, right? So you're talking about a very small number. So just putting that into perspective as we think about youth justice policy. I will say there is no substitute for high quality data that offers an objective picture of youth victimization and crime. And as you return to your offices after today's symposium and share what you've learned, I hope you'll take a closer look at the data here on crime and young people and consider the underlying reasons for that. So I want to really underscore the importance of the issue of that kids are kids, right? We've heard that all day. Kids are kids. Kids make rash decisions and they act on impulse, which can lead them down the wrong path, as we've heard, but they can change. Kids are capable of change. A longitudinal study by OJJDP and the National Institute of Justice shows that most young people who engage in delinquent behavior age out of it. Again, we heard that this morning too, but that's a national study and that's across the country. That is that young people who commit offenses, even serious offenses, are not automatically destined for the criminal justice system. The vast majority of young people reduce their offending over time, regardless of the intervention they receive. But the study found that young people who received community-based services were more likely to attend school, access work opportunities, and avoid further justice system involvement. So to be clear, we're not excusing delinquent behavior, we're just explaining it and sharing the data on what we know about kids. And so we know that there's a path towards rehabilitation and growth for young people. So in closing, I want to encourage you to visit OJJDP's website to learn more about what we do, the resources we offer, the information we provide. We also have a newsletter that we do every month, and we highlight the examples of effective programs. Our website is ojjdp.gov. We can also circulate that with the conference organizers. And I hope you'll also take a look at our new website around the 50th anniversary. We're really kind of looking, our theme this year is looking back, moving forward, and we're organizing events around the country in partnership with stakeholders to really lift up conversations just like this one about the future of youth justice. Where are we headed and where do we want to go with that? We are going to host a national convening on November 19th to 21st in Washington, D.C. To really lift up a lot of the best practices that are happening around the country, to connect people across the country, and to inspire people forward on this work. And I hope to see many of you there. So I want to thank you again for inviting me to join you, and it's been an inspiring morning, and I'll be here all afternoon. I hope to connect with many of you then. Thank you so much.